Tonight, a family's fury at the sentence for the sex worker who killed a Point Cook couple and their newborn. An Uber driver bashed while protecting one of his passengers. Federal police accuse Russia of the Medibank hack. A pause in the campaign to mark Remembrance Day. Melbourne men trial a world-first contraceptive gel. And the AFL's version of Magic Round bound for South Australia, but it still needs a name.
This is Melbourne's 9 News with Peter Hitchener.
Good evening. A sex worker who killed a young Point Cook couple and their newborn baby when she set fire to their home could be freed on parole in less than a decade. The families of the victims say they feel ripped apart by the sentence. Court reporter Eliza Rugg.
They knew no punishment would bring back their loved ones, but for the families of Abby Forrest, Indy Singh and their 19-day-old baby Ivy, 13 years jail for the killer arsonist has left them gutted.
I just can't believe the sentence we got now. I'm not coping with it at all.
We don't get closure on this. No. We get 3 life sentences on this.
In December 2020, Jenny Hayes, a sex worker, organised to meet up with a friend of Mr Singh. The man had access to a ground floor bedroom of the family's Point Cook townhouse. He stole money from Hayes and fled. She stayed and set a mattress on fire, sending him photos.
You wanted to punish him for what he'd done to you. Dangerous and totally inappropriate overreaction.
The blaze quickly spread upstairs, where Abby, Indy and Ivy were asleep.
They were unable to escape and died in the fire.
I just want them to be remembered for who they were in a good memory and not their last final moments.
Jenny Hayes was facing 3 counts of murder, but those charges were later downgraded. The 48-year-old maintains she did not know the family was home.
Do you guys buy that?
No. No, there's something in me, I don't know what it is. I just feel that she might have known and forgot in her rage.
Jenny Hayes kept her head down. She didn't look up once throughout today's hearing. She was given a discount on her sentence, partly because she's had an extremely traumatic life and also because she has borderline personality disorder. The judge found this sparked her impulsive, deadly decision. With time served, Hayes could be free in just over 6 years.
We should have been making memories, and memories is all we'll have now.
Eliza Rugg, 9 News.
An Uber driver who was violently assaulted while trying to protect one of his passengers says he has no regrets. Leo Rosenthal was attacked after picking a woman up from a home she was trying to escape. Crime reporter Lana Murphy.
When Leo Rosenthal pulled up to this safety beach home last night, he knew something was off.
Yeah, she was leaving someone.
His female passenger had piles of her possessions packed up, then a shirtless, toothless man came running towards her.
He jumps in and says, drive, drive, so I got out of there fast as I could. So we went, then he followed us.
For 30 kilometres, the Uber was tailgated along Eastlink, taunted by a man in a black Commodore, who Leo says reached speeds of up to 140 kilometres per hour. The driver thought he was in the clear, reaching a Langwarrin storage facility where he helped the woman unload behind a locked gate. But the man appeared.
I'm going to beat you up, I'm going to go home and smash everything you've got.
He jumped the fence, then lashed out at Leo, punching him 3 times in the face and knocking him unconscious.
Hit my chin on the railing, then my head went back and hit my throat.
When the 59-year-old woke up a minute or so later, his attacker had disappeared, but the woman was still here, so Leo helped her continue to unpack her boxes until her mother arrived. He drove himself to a police station, then to hospital, where he spent the night getting stitches. This morning, those at the suspect's property played dumb.
Was anyone home last night?
Until police arrived. Officers are yet to make an arrest, but Leo says he'd do it all again.
She's vulnerable, and if he gets to her, I thought, and he's willing to hit me, what's he going to do to her? And the last thing I wanted to, is her to get hurt.
Lana Murphy, 9 News.
Federal police have confirmed hackers responsible for the Medibank cyber attack are based in Russia. As Damien Ryan reports, officers are vowing to bring the criminals to justice.
Russia is locked in a battle with the Ukraine, and now it's launched a war of a different kind on Australia.
We know where they're coming from, we know who is responsible, and we say that they should be held to account.
The Prime Minister flew overseas, leaving those hunting down the Medibank hackers to fill in the gaps.
We believe those responsible for the breach are in Russia.
A cyber gang with a worldwide network.
Cybercrime is the break and enter of the 21st century, and personal information is being used as currency.
The AFP says they know who they're after, but refuse to name them. Bringing them to justice may be wishful thinking.
We'll be holding talks with Russian law enforcement about these individuals.
Right now, Russia is an international pariah and has a checkered history of cooperating with the West. One example, denying any responsibility in the MH17 disaster.
Today's tough talk from the AFP is unlikely to stop the hackers. This morning they were back at it, dumping customers' information on the dark web to bring more fear and harm.
It landed with an evil boast. We warned you, we always keep our word. 241 Medibank customers who'd received treatment for alcohol abuse identified. Nervously watching on from the sidelines, the rest of the business community.
We're all in the same storm, we're just in all different boats.
The NAB has revealed it's been the target of 50 million cyber attacks in the past month and has spent tens of millions of dollars trying to be safe and secure.
There's never a guarantee that this won't happen again.
So, no promises, but from the police, a pledge to the Australian public.
The AFP and our partners are not going to give up, bringing those responsible to justice.
Damien Ryan, 9 News.
In the shadow of lingering investigations, our leaders pushed pause on the race to win Victoria's vote. The Premier and his political rival buried the hatchet momentarily to mark Remembrance Day. State political reporter Mark Santomartino.
Sharing a handshake and not much else, Daniel Andrews and Matthew Guy sat silently, shoulder to shoulder, to honour our fallen. The leaders barely uttered a word before greeting the Governor outside the shrine, and neither flinched when targeted by the most disrespectful of hecklers. Leaving it to Melbourne's weather and a couple of wet seats to break the tension, political rivals sharing a smile and some rare small talk.
It was nothing combative, I can assure you of that.
Surrounded by pink and a confusingly red cake.
That's very good.
Matthew Guy promised to hire 14 new breast cancer nurses, like the McGrath Foundation's Liz Douglas.
1 in 5 women are actually not currently supported by a McGrath breast care nurse, which is really alarming.
The opposition sounding its own alarm over anti-corruption investigations tied up in the courts.
Victorians have to ask, why is the state government seeking to block the release of Corruption Commission reports 2 weeks from a state election?
It'd be inappropriate to comment on a matter before the courts.
Jacinta Allen stood in for Labor's stroll through Sunbury.
The platypus then take advantage of that in the deeper areas.
Pledging planning protection for a dozen Melbourne creeks and the Maribyrnong River. Adding to the modest announcement, $10 million to beautify the banks of these 12 waterways with trees and other vegetation.
Habitat is vital, encroachment needs to be managed.
Lily D'Ambrosio, who attended a Labor Party fundraiser organised by Anthony Pratt, denied his company Visy would get any preferential treatment as her department decides who will run Victoria's container deposit scheme.
They will do what they do, independent totally.
I don't think there's any issues with the laws. I think the issues might be the minister more than the law.
Mark Santomartino, 9 News.
And we want to know what's important to you this state election. Tell us what you think on our website, 9news.com.au/Your Say Victoria. COVID cases have jumped by 63% in the past week, with Victoria recording more than 16,600 new infections. The average daily number of patients in intensive care has surged by more than 50% this week. 277 people are currently being treated in hospital, with 41 COVID-19 related deaths reported in the past 7 days. A weekend deluge threatens to hit Melbourne and Victoria's already flood-ravaged towns. Heavy rain is forecast across the state, putting the T20 World Cup final in jeopardy. Adam Hegarty has the details.
As the clouds form above Melbourne, a nightmare looms in Victoria's flood zone. There's more rain coming.
That does mean with the catchments being so wet, there is a renewed risk of fairly widespread flooding right across the whole of the state.
Kerrang, Echuca, Shepparton and several towns along 25 river catchments facing a high-risk weekend. it wouldn't take much. Right now, the Hume Dam's releasing 85,000 megalitres of water a day. More rain could mean more flooding.
That will put the likes of Albury, Wodonga at the low end of major flooding, and that will obviously then flow downstream to the likes of Yarrawonga and Tocumwal.
The major warnings are for the northeast: Orvale, Shepparton, Benalla, Wangaratta, Wodonga, to name a few. 60 to 90 millimetres could fall. Sunday, the heaviest day, including in Melbourne, possible severe thunderstorms. The timing couldn't be worse. The T20 World Cup final is here at the G on Sunday, and they'll do whatever they can to avoid a washout.
We are in Melbourne, aren't we? It's in the lap of the gods, isn't it?
With games already abandoned, this time a backup. The final could be moved to Monday, but even then, no guarantee of dry play.
There is fatigue. There's no denying that across our communities, and particularly those communities that have been impacted by this flood event.
Where tonight, the warnings are echoed again.
Be prepared for flooding.
And unfortunately, that's going to be a warning that stays in place for quite some time. Yeah, the Bureau today revealing there's still probably going to be another 6 to 8 weeks at least of above average rainfall. And even right now, there are around 45 flood warnings in place across the state. So, Pete, plenty of residents, plenty of families in those flood-ravaged communities, particularly in the northeast of Victoria, will be hoping tonight that the flood levels there, the water, has receded enough to mitigate anything this weekend.
Yes, very much so. Thank you, Adam Hegarty. A teenager has been charged after a dramatic standoff with police in a Campbellfield car park. The 17-year-old, as well as a 22-year-old Bundoora man and a 35-year-old Broadmeadows woman, are accused of an armed robbery in Keilor on Wednesday afternoon. Police say a woman was threatened with a gun before they stole a Holden Commodore and fled. The Bundoora man remains in hospital after being bitten by a police dog. The Prime Minister is bound for Cambodia, the first stop on a diplomatic tour across Asia. Anthony Albanese is set to attend 3 summits in 9 days, including a potential meeting with the Chinese president. More from Reece D'Alessandro.
Scaling the stairs at Sydney Airport to a diplomatic tightrope abroad, the PM carries the weight of expectation.
This is a time of great global uncertainty.
So-called summit season, drawing world leaders discussing climate, the economy and security.
We want an Indo-Pacific that is peaceful, that is stable and that is secure.
First stop, the ASEAN summit in Cambodia. The PM's 20,000-kilometre round trip will start here and end at the APEC summit in neighbouring Thailand, between the two G20 in Bali, where he'll rub shoulders with his international counterparts, including US President Joe Biden and China's Xi Jinping. The two presidents will meet privately, but the Prime Minister's played down his own sideline meeting.
There isn't a meeting at this stage locked in. We want to cooperate where we can, but we will stand up for Australian values where we must.
The China-Australia relationship has been in the deep freezer for some time, only recently starting to thaw, and the PM will need to navigate trade sanctions and rising tensions to move forward.
Quite clearly, there have been issues with the relationship. We have some $20 billion of economic sanctions against Australia, but that is not in Australia's interest in terms of our jobs and the economy, but it's also not in China's interest.
A lack of interest too in Vladimir Putin.
Russia needs to get the message that it is isolated amongst those who support the international rule of law, and it should withdraw.
But given Putin's declined the invitation, it's a message that won't be delivered, at least not face to face. Reece D'Alessandro, 9 News.
Footy fans will be treated to an extra game next year in the AFL's version of Magic Round. All 18 teams will descend on South Australia for a 4-day festival, but as Joshua Dorr explains, the bonus fixture still needs a name.
9 games, 4 days, 1 city. A lofty dream for any fan. But thanks to their persistent premier, South Australia finally has a footy first.
I actually told him at one point he was a pest.
We welcome the competition, but obviously the best team won.
The City of Churches beating out New South Wales and WA to own round 5 during the April school holidays. Adelaide Oval will host Thursday and Friday night blockbusters, followed by double headers on Saturday and Sunday. The other 3 matches played in the suburbs, including one in the Barossa Valley, with free entry for all club members.
Families bringing their kids for the weekend, girls' trips, boys' trips. So I actually think that the passion will actually create an asset and an opportunity that actually will reverberate around the country.
A replica of the NRL's Magic Round, the concept makes next year the AFL's first 23-game season.
We've taken what was happening to empty venues in a practice game, in a pre-season game, and transformed it into what I'm optimistic is going to be a huge initiative.
Gillan McLaughlin is eager to take the show around the country, but first he needs a little help naming it.
So has anyone got anything off the top of the head they think's a good name? Whether it's road trip round or big round or Mallee round or...
This is another legacy piece for the league's outgoing CEO, but McLaughlin remains committed to wrapping up the Tasmanian bid and Hawthorn's racism investigation before departing.
What that date is, I can't tell you, but it's not going to be into late next year, but it's over the coming months.
Joshua Dawn, 9 News.
Now with the look ahead to more sport, Tony Jones.
Thanks, Pete. Good evening. It's been quite the day on the footy front, I must say. And later, a massive backflip by the Saints. Also, the English cricketers hit town, ready to face Pakistan in the T20 final. And it's Aussie Matt who's plotting against England once more.
It means the opportunity to set nations alight and alive again, reinvigorate a nation through its national team's performance.
More woes for the Victorian cricketers. This man produces a few tricks for the Wizards. But could this kid from Cranbourne be the next big thing in the NBA? Looking forward to that story, Pete. And also an Essendon favourite returns to get his club back on track.
Good work. Thank you, Tony. Well, ahead in Melbourne's 9 News, Victorians reflect on the fragility of peace and the price paid to defend it. Plus, a man on his way to a service caught in a head-on smash. Hugs from locals as Ukrainian forces close in on Kherson. And Donald Trump ridiculed by his favourite newspaper. The haunting sound of the bugle rang out across the city today. More than a century after the guns of the Western Front fell silent, hundreds paused to honour those who gave their lives in service of our country. Mimi Becker reports.
A single minute that means so much. A moment of reflection, remembrance and thanks.
I think of my grandfather. It's all about him. And for 1 minute, it's him. He's alive today.
In the crowd, 95-year-old Margaret Hattersley, who served in the Second World War.
It gets very hard because you're losing all your friends, you know, and you're still here. And you think, oh, well, you know, that's how it is.
At the shrine, the Premier and Governor laid wreaths before joining the state in silence at the 11th hour of the 11th day of the 11th month, the moment that marks the end of the First World War. The city stopped, buglers stationed at 16 street corners.
To have so many people come out and watch, you know the people are remembered and there is respect there.
People can come from their offices and from building sites and all the rest of it, like they did here, so that they can remember the sacrifice of so many.
The significance of today remembering a war 104 years ago, not lost on the young.
If you remember, it might never happen again, so it's important to remember all the people that died and saved your country.
9-year-old Edward Larkin paying his respect, wearing his great-grandfather's jacket.
Makes me feel proud. I just like it so much.
With others acknowledging the struggles felt by those who make it back.
Many veterans have a whole range of emotions. It can trigger post-traumatic stress, it can trigger bad stuff.
Many here today say the service is a welcome reminder of the importance to stop and reflect on November 11, no matter how busy life gets.
I feel very humble and just very gentle, actually. I just feel this is in a way, it's home.
Mimi Becker, 9 News.
And a man on his way to a Remembrance Day service is in hospital after a head-on crash in Armidale this morning. The cars collided at the intersection of Wattletree and Kooyong roads, with the driver of the other vehicle treated at the scene. Police are appealing for witnesses. Ukraine is reacting with caution to Russia's decision to withdraw troops from the southern city of Kherson. As Karian Greenbank reports, there are growing fears Moscow could be setting a trap.
Ukrainian forces are closing in on the outskirts of Kherson city. Locals hugging soldiers, the first Ukrainians they've seen for more than 8 months. Kherson was captured by Russia just days after the invasion began. President Zelensky is urging caution, with fears the Russian withdrawal might be a trap. If it's not, it marks a major turning point and Moscow's biggest retreat since it abandoned plans to capture Kyiv.
This is a significant military milestone for the Ukrainians if, in fact, it happens that Russia follows through and withdraws.
But a senior Ukrainian official is among those accusing Russia of trying to turn Kherson into a city of death by booby-trapping the city with mines.
Is likely to be laced with improvised explosive devices, and it'll take a significant amount of time for the Ukrainians to clear routes in and out.
Ukraine's defence minister saying any withdrawal would likely take at least a week.
Just imagine 40,000 people with equipment, weaponry, armed vehicles, tanks, etc., etc.
The US's most senior general is estimating 100,000 Russian troops and 100,000 Ukrainian troops have been killed or wounded since the start of the war, and around 40,000 Ukrainian civilians have been killed. A shocking statistic and the highest estimated death toll we've heard from any Western official. In London, Karian Greenbank, 9 News.
Donald Trump has attacked Rupert Murdoch's News Corp in a scathing statement, claiming it's all in for his main challenger, Ron DeSantis. It comes after the New York Post published the former president as Trumpty Dumpty and the Florida governor as the future. Trump called DeSantis an average politician whose success was owed to his endorsement, accusing him of playing games by refusing to rule out a White House run in 2024. Madeline Slattery's along now. The city escaped the storms again, Maddie.
That's right, it did, Pete. And despite a few sprinkles, there's been no rainfall recorded today. The temperature barely moved, going from a low of 18.7 only up to 20.2. These storm clouds in the Yarra Valley tell a different story, though. Up to 24 millimetres was recorded in those parts. Thunderstorms kicked off around lunchtime, some severe, and they've delivered isolated heavy rain up to 35 millimetres in the far east, 49 near Traralgon, and there is still a lot of activity around. The risk of severe storms is now most likely for these areas here in orange. Melbourne should be mostly dry for the rest of the night, and the weekend will be a tale of two stories, tomorrow being the much better one, and I'll have all those details for you later on, Pete.
OK, thank you, Maddie. After the break, Melbourne men in a trial of a world-first contraceptive. A rare November hurricane slams into storm-ravaged Florida, and debris from the Challenger disaster found on the ocean floor. Melbourne doctors are conducting a world-first contraceptive trial for men, likened to a mini vasectomy. The 10-minute reversible procedure involves injecting them with fertility-blocking gel. Medical reporter Emily Rice.
Many blokes are excited by the prospect of a new form of men's birth control.
Sign me up. Let's do it. 100%.
Yeah, I'll try it. Definitely.
Epworth Health's Professor Nathan Lawrenchuk is trialling a world-first male contraceptive procedure called ADAM on 25 Melbourne men.
I suppose it's a mini version of a vasectomy.
For the ADAM treatment, a urologist will inject a gel into the vas deferens, a pair of tubes which carry semen. The gel then forms a barrier, blocking sperm from travelling through the tubes and preventing egg fertilisation.
The gel works by a little bit like super glue. It will take about 10 minutes and would be done under local anaesthetic.
Unlike having the snip, the liquid vasectomy is temporary.
We expect the gel to last in humans for around the 2-year period.
To their surprise, researchers have been inundated with blokes volunteering to be a part of the contraceptive trial. In fact, Epworth has now paused recruitment due to overwhelming interest. If and when the Atom contraceptive makes it to market, many women who have been using various forms of birth control for decades will also welcome the new option for fellas.
Just so men can finally share the burden.
It's long overdue, years overdue. We should already have it.
Emily Rice, 9 News.
Detectives are launching a fresh investigation into the murder of John Benet Ramsey almost 3 decades after the 6-year-old was killed. The Colorado Cold Case Review, with the support of Boulder Police, will use new technology to test the small amount of DNA evidence linked to the case. Police say until now they've followed up 21,000 tips, travelled to 19 states and interviewed 1,000 people. Nearly 37 years after the Space Shuttle Challenger exploded after liftoff, a piece has been found off the coast of Florida. The discovery was made by a History Channel documentary crew, which had been searching for a downed World War II aircraft in the Atlantic Ocean. NASA says this gives the world an opportunity to pause and remember the 7 daring and brave explorers who lost their lives in the blast. A rare and deadly November hurricane has slammed into Florida's east coast, washing away homes, buildings and roads. In a nasty case of déjà vu, the storm hit an area still cleaning up from nature's fury. Lizzie Pearl has more.
Daytona Beach, homes, swimming pools, waterfront properties, gone. The force of Hurricane Nicole pushing the Atlantic Ocean into front yards, the coastline eaten away. For some, an up-close, front-row seat to an angry sea, while for others, homes ripped open, lives ripped apart. After Nicole made landfall in Florida, the first hurricane to do so in November in nearly 40 years.
The wind's very strong here, and the waves just keep on coming.
That's my backyard.
Florida's east coast is copping a pounding. Category 4 Hurricane Ian washed away seawalls and the last lines of defence only weeks ago. And last night, Nicole, a much weaker storm, did the rest.
It was a trifecta of Ian and then a king tide and then Nicole, and we just didn't have a chance to recover.
The weather-weary state, once again, cleaning up.
We're ready and we have resources to respond to whatever post-storm needs may arise.
In the United States, Lizzie Pearl, 9 News.
The stock market soars to a 4-month high thanks to a Wall Street bounce. Chris Kohler has the details next. The new drug tackling build-ups of iron in the brain to treat a rare disease. And this bus stop's been moved just 5 metres and it could mean the end of this small business. A wave of optimism has washed over global share markets. New York traders had their best day since September 2020 and the ASX also surged. Business reporter Chris Kohler.
It was a frenzy on Wall Street overnight as investors dared to dream the interest rate rises could soon come to an end. The main index soared 5.5%, the biggest gain in 2.5 years, and the bruised and battered tech giants led the way. Amazon jumping 12%, Meta 10%, Apple and Microsoft 8%, and Tesla 7% despite talk of possible bankruptcy. The reason was inflation. Prices in the US didn't rise as much as economists thought they would last month, creating a wave of optimism that maybe the crisis is starting to lose steam. A huge gain on our market today too, with the ASX rising 2.8% or over 190 points. BHP, CSL and Macquarie all up more than 3%. And the Aussie dollar hit a 7-week high. It's buying 66 US cents, close to 65 euro cents and 56.5 British pence.
And the average price of unleaded in Melbourne as we head into the weekend, $2 a litre. Kew, Altona and Ascot Vale are suburbs to steer clear of. An Australian-developed drug that targets the build-up of iron in the brain is being trialled on patients with a progressive brain disorder. The hope is it'll also eventually be used to combat Parkinson's disease. Gabriella Rogers with the story.
56-year-old Wendy Lanner used to be so active. She managed a beauty salon, was a regular at her gym and played intensely with her grandchildren.
For my family, I did everything, went to gym, and I could do none of that now. I can barely walk and barely talk.
A few years ago, she was diagnosed with multiple system atrophy, a disease that is often mistaken for Parkinson's.
That I was getting quite worse, faster than someone with Parkinson's.
There are no treatments to slow or stop the disease.
We can only really manage the symptoms as best we can.
MRI scans of affected patients overseas show an accumulation of iron in the brain. Researchers are trialling an oral drug called ATH434, which binds and redistributes the iron to prevent clumps of a protein called alpha-synuclein, implicated in both MSA and Parkinson's disease.
Prevents an important protein from misfolding, and in doing so, it actually helps preserve the integrity of nerve cells.
That are specifically targeted to try and reverse or reduce the underlying disease process.
The drug will be trialled on 60 patients with early disease in Australia, New Zealand and the UK. The company is also carrying out animal studies to target Parkinson's disease. St Vincent's Hospital is currently recruiting patients with multiple system atrophy.
I try and live each day to my best ability. I do think if this drug is successful, it's going to be marvellous.
Gabriella Rogers, 9 News.
A small business owner says her nursery could go under after the government decided to relocate a bus stop just 5 metres down the road. Sosiana Murray has told Reid Butler it's a waste of taxpayers' money and she'll lose her car parks as a result.
A Barney over a bus stop, pitting this nursery owner against neighbours and the government.
Disgusted, appalled at taxpayers' money being wasted. It's a moving of a bus stop, for goodness sake.
The issue best illustrated from the air. This is where the bus stop had been, and this is where it's been moved.
Less than 5 metres.
At significant cost, around $40,000. Sosiana Murray says she'll lose her nursery's car parks as a result. The Green Folly has become a bona fide tourist destination in Castlemaine, but without space for visitors to pull up, her fear is business will suffer.
It also will affect 25 staff members for their job. If we're not viable, then they won't have a job.
The Department of Transport has defended the move, claiming a number of car parks will be retained and the bus stop needed to be upgraded to better suit disabled commuters.
I find it pathetic when they're saying that, when there's no way that a wheelchair can get access to the bus stop.
I think it's pretty clear that there would have been other ways around it.
The move has divided the community, sparking tension between Sosiana and her neighbours.
It's a bus stop that's in constant use and it couldn't be seen because it was hiding behind a tree.
It may be a short distance from here to there, but it certainly caused a lot of problems. Sosiana says one of her main concerns has been the lack of consultation ahead of the move.
It was just like, we're doing it, end of story.
But this fight is far from over. Reid Butler, 9 News.
Nine will remain home of tennis for an extra 5 years, with the network extending its partnership with Tennis Australia. The agreement includes the Australian Open and lead-in tournaments, as well as the Davis and Billie Jean King Cups.
Nine have an unbelievable commitment to the game, and that's clearly indicated in their broadcast of all 4 slams.
Bringing Australia's most iconic sporting moments to Aussies everywhere, live and free.
The partnership will run until the end of 2029. Now with more sport, Tony Jones.
Thanks, Peter. Hello again. Coming up, Saints fans rejoice. An unpopular move has been punted. Joshua Dorr.
Tony, it was a tropical escape to Cairns which derailed the Saints' season. Today, one of a number of casualties of a scathing footy review. I'll have the details next.
Thanks, Josh. Also coming up, how Pakistan is planning to do 1992 all over again. And we meet Harry, Australia's next big basketball export. Footy first up, and St Kilda will scrap a contentious decision to sell games interstate. It's a key finding of its football operations review. Let's go live now to Joshua Dorr. And Josh, the Saints will keep their home games at home.
Yeah, sounds like a simple concept, Tony, but one the Saints overlooked earlier this year when they were flying at 5-1 and decided to sell a home game to Cairns. It was a disastrous night for the club, losing to Port Adelaide in real humid, sticky conditions. Really the start of a downward trajectory which saw the club miss finals and resulted in Brett Ratton losing his job. The Football Review into their program found that it recommends not to sell off a game into the future and apply a stronger football lens to any future fixturing decisions. The Saints confident they've addressed a number of other issues that review found and that Ross Lyon and Jeff Walsh can bridge the leadership gap and fix some of the feedback issues that are required. Staying on the fixture, the AFL is expected to release that in the first week of December after the draft. The clubs will get a $500,000 bonus from Magic Round, but a grand final rematch looms a bit of a long shot in round one. The Cats unlikely to unfurl their flag at home because the GMHBA redevelopments won't be ready until May and June. Over at Essendon, Dean Rioli has been appointed on the board, the former Bomber taking a role as the club's first Indigenous director, one of the key findings of their external review. On-field, ruckman Sam Draper has signed a 2-year contract extension and will remain in the red and black until 2025. Tony?
Well, plenty happening for a Friday, Josh. Thanks for that. Having plotted against the old enemy in his batting heyday, former Aussie opener Matthew Hayden is now preparing to ruin their T20 World Cup dream. Hayden is these days helping coach Pakistan, who are facing England in Sunday's final, hopefully, rain permitting, at the MCG. More from Xander Maguire.
The significance of Sunday isn't lost on these current day stars. In 1992, a packed MCG witnessed a watershed moment in Pakistan history, toppling England for their first and only Cricket World Cup.
I'm very happy. I'm very happy. I know.
30 years on, they'll look to repeat history.
And hopefully they can say we were in a winning final, and they'll tell these stories around campfires in their villages, the opportunity to set nations alight and alive again, reinvigorate a nation through its national team's performance.
Pakistan have found the man for the moment in two-time world champion Matthew Hayden. The Aussie legend feeling right at home.
The way that Pakistan has welcomed me has been, a real treat and something I'll never forget.
One of Australia's best ever openers now mentors Mohammad Rizwan and Babar Azam, who head into the final finding form at the right time.
They get each other, they get the game of cricket, they understand that it's going to have its lulls, but generally speaking, they've got each other's backs.
But it's this opening pair who arrive in Melbourne in even more ominous touch. Alex Hales and Joss Butler produced an unbeaten 170-run partnership to topple India, the highest in T20 World Cup history. It means, just like 1992, England are hot favourites.
To make it into a final is fantastic, and we'll be doing all we can to try and win the match.
But carrying the weight of a nation won't take this proud team away from the basics.
Hit big sixes. Pretty simple.
Xander Maguire, 9 News.
Still on cricket, and it's been a diabolical Shield campaign by Victoria against Queensland. We've been rolled in just 2 days. Having made just 63 in the first dig, the Vicks were all out today for 132. Marcus Harris again failing, making just 1.
Oh, that's out. Straight through. Well bowled by Nisa, and that's the end of Harris.
Will Sutherland was about the only Victorian to show any grit, scoring 48. Kyle Kuzma was the standout performer in the NBA today, guiding the Washington Wizards to a strong win over Dallas. The Mavericks dominated the first half, but a trio of three-pointers in the fourth quarter allowed the Wizards to weave some magic.
Step back, long distance three, and he hits. Kyle Kuzma.
113 to 105 was the final scoreline there. Back-to-back wins for Washington for only the second time this season. Meanwhile, Cranbourne is set to provide the NBA with its next superstar. Harry Spearings will soon pack his bags for the US, but he won't step foot on an actual court. The list of Australian basketball exports to the NBA is glittering. It includes Luke Longley, Paddy Mills, Ben Simmons and Harry Spearings. This unassuming 21-year-old is our next basketball superstar.
Yeah, it's all a bit new. I can't say I'm used to it, but something I'm going to have to learn and get used to over the next few months before I go over.
Harry's current job is at Cranbourne Racecourse, where his dad is the track manager. So, yes, this is Harry's workplace. So too is this.
Well, my mate in my basketball team when I was 10 or 11, I borrowed his game. He had 2K11 or 2K10. I borrowed it and then I just stole it and never gave it back, and I played everyone since.
Harry has just been drafted as one of 5 gamers to represent Australia in the NBA 2K League. This is more than a video game, however. He'll soon jump on a plane to set up base in the United States.
I've never even left the country, so I don't even know what to think about it or what to expect, but I'm looking forward to it, that's for sure.
In the online world, Harry has made quite a name for himself.
My online name is Real HVZM.
Many parents are concerned by the amount of time their children are spending online these days. It's fair to say Harry's family is now not so much online, but on board.
They're all for it now. They weren't about 2 weeks ago. They were always telling me to get off the game, but now that I'm getting paid to play, they're very happy.
The Australian team has the full backing of the NBL. In fact, this is the moment when Harry met Larry, the latter being NBL owner Larry Kesselman. And the stakes are high.
$2.5 million in prize money, full contracts for the season. It's all getting real now.
World glory is now on the line for Harry, but in the meantime, there's a track to knock into shape for others to chase their own slice of glory. Tomorrow's Cranbourne Cup. We wish him well, that's for sure. It's inspired me, actually. So do you want to play a bit of Fortnite tonight?
Yeah, good idea.
Tour of duty?
Yeah, right after the news breaks. Lock it in. Righto. Thank you, Tony. Time now to check back with Maddie Slattery. How's tomorrow looking?
Oh, Pete, tomorrow is looking like the much better day of the weekend. Daylight hours will be mostly dry, then possible showers and storms in Melbourne tomorrow night. Sunday, though, is when things will take a nasty turn. I'll let you know how it'll all play out after the break. Hello again. It was another uncomfortably hot night in Melbourne. The city only got down to 19 degrees and it only managed to climb up to 20. Storms and showers started in Melbourne's northern and eastern districts around noon, and it's been a very stormy end to the working week for eastern districts. There's been widespread rainfall totals of 5 to 15 millimetres in that part of the state. Some higher totals with storms though, 49 near Traralgon, 35 at Reeves Knob and also the far east. The more severe activity has now contracted to the northeast district, and this area here in orange is under a warning for damaging winds and heavy rainfall that could lead to flash flooding. And that's where we could see a few storms lingering tomorrow morning. At the other end of the state, the next system is expected to arrive in the Mallee and Wimmera from the late morning, then extending into other parts later in the day. Sunday is the day to watch though. The atmosphere is expected to become quite unstable as northerly winds drag down more tropical moisture. There is the potential for heavy falls, most likely for the central and eastern ranges. And with catchments already saturated, we could see rapid river rises as well as major flooding in the north, depending on how much rainfall develops. And here's how Saturday is looking around the country. Brisbane will be sunny. It's heading for 29 degrees, 26 in Sydney, 16 and cloudy in Hobart, up to 20 millimetres of rain and a possible storm in Adelaide, dry and 21 degrees in Perth. Back home, the biggest rainfall totals are forecast in the far west. Up to 13 in Walpia, Mildura 10. The stormy conditions will become more widespread later in the afternoon, so we could see some heavier downpours developing. Minimums will be in double figures again, then peaking in the high teens and low 20s through the south, the mid to high 20s through the north, up to 29 degrees in the Mallee. And here in Melbourne, minimums of 11, 12 and 13 are forecast. Maximums should have a 2 in the front of them all across the board, and Yarra Glen is looking like the warmest, heading for 23. Evening showers will be light with the chance of a storm. Geelong is expecting much the same, a medium chance of showers at night and a top of 19 degrees. A bit warmer in the city, 21 degrees from an overnight low of 13. And then on Sunday, it's showers from the get-go and storms are looking more likely again from the afternoon, up to 20 millimetres, but we could see up to 30 for some suburbs. It will be the warmest day of the week though, 26. A further 5 to 10 millimetres on Monday. Windy in the morning and the risk of storms persisting, 19 degrees. And then showers do continue on Tuesday and Wednesday, tops of 16 and 15 degrees. And then drying out a little by the end of the week, a top of 18 on Thursday and then 24 degrees this time next week. So tonight will be much cooler, a low of 13 degrees and then a cloudy top of 21. Possible showers will hit after dark and it won't be so muggy, Pete.
Oh, that's good to hear. OK, thank you, Maddie. And Melbourne, that's what's news this Friday. Deb Knight's next with the current affair from all of us. Have a great weekend and good night.